What's going on, viewer? Mr. Wayne here. You already know what time it is. It is time for part 16 of Master Key System. Now, I have a lot of things I'd like to share too before we actually do get started. So I know last week I was talking about real estate, and this week I went to a family meeting on Tuesday. So I met a lot of the realtors from the office. Lots of great people, very great presentation. We met 4 people that, excuse me, that came out of nowhere. We met 4 other great people that work hand in hand with our realtors that operate in different companies, like construction. Construction was one of them. I got that man's number. He was telling us all the buildings that he's built in the Tri-Cities alone. And he even helped build the office that Keller Williams runs their franchise in. And I got his information. He told me to contact him when I can, and he'll show me just more of what he does, right? More of what he does. I got another man's number who is a part of the national property inspections. And for our clients, I've had 2 meetings. Today we had another meeting this morning. It was a contractors meeting, so we were going over contracts, just filling out contracts, what they mean when it comes to us real estate agents and what it means with the client too. Now I still have a ton to learn. I'm just dabbling in this. And today was our second meeting, and we learned a lot, and we're very excited. But we got this contact, the man who does these property inspections. He's been a part of the business 20 plus years. And, I was learning today that the seller has no obligation to get their property inspected. And if a buyer would like an inspection, the seller could deny getting an inspection. Right, so it's very, very interesting. Obviously, the buyer would walk away in that case if the seller is not willing to get their home or their property inspected, and that there's literally no obligation for the seller to do that. And then we met another lady. She's actually the assistant vice president of this company. It's the Fidelity National Home Warranty. And I spent about 40 minutes after the meeting talking with her, and she gave me her information. She said if I need her to contact her directly and not go through the phone line that anybody else would have to go through. She says she's at our office all the time. And her line of business is home, like warranties, right? A home warranty. Warranties of like the higher functions of the house, like the plumbing, things and whatnot, and protect your home. It's a home warranty, and they deal with plumbing, the heating system, the cooling system, the water heater, anything electrical, oven, range, cooktop, anything with the kitchen and the refrigerator. Like, they deal with this. And what she was telling us too is we need to negotiate the need of having a home inspection. Because obviously if the property doesn't get inspected, but they end up buying a home warranty, then they're going to be questioning why the inspection was never done to begin with, because that's their time and their money that's being used that could have been avoided if the inspection had been done to begin with. So it's very, very interesting. I'm very excited. And I ordered Keller Williams' book, and I ordered his book, The Millionaire Real Estate Agent. I also ordered his book, The Millionaire Real Estate Investor. Now, I read The Millionaire Real Estate Investor 6 years ago, a long time ago. And the reason I chose to move forward with Keller Williams, yes, they're the #1 franchise in the world, but I actually had a mentor many, many years ago. Her name was Florentine, and she was brilliant, very brilliant lady, and she showed a lot of interest in helping me, and she was a real estate agent through Keller Williams. Now, there's a whole back end, further, deeper story when it comes to it, but I don't want to get too into it because it was a long time ago, and it involves people that I used to be close to, and we're not close anymore. But, anyway, it's part of life. We all move on, do different things. But I've been thinking about her too, and I've been considering contacting her maybe sometime soon in the future after I get my real estate license, and just update her on how I'm doing and see how she's doing, And I also have this really awesome luxury magazine that I've been looking at. $1,000,000 homes, like multi-million-dollar homes, luxury homes, big homes. And I look at it like, wow, like people have tremendous amounts of wealth to be able to afford these homes. And how cool would it be to be the realtor selling these super awesome homes? That would be sick. That would be awesome. It'd be very awesome. And I remember there was a part, it was an estate, like a community estate, and it had this picture of a home like right on the dock of a lake. It was absolutely phenomenal. And so this thing is, I'm very excited. And I was very anxious for yesterday and today, and now that it's happened, I feel more content that I have my foot in the door to be working with these people. And then today's meeting, a contracts meeting, I don't think any of the meetings are open to anyone who's not yet licensed, but they made an exception for me to already start joining until I get my license. Because it's probably, from the way it looks right now and the amount I'm making with my current finances and bills, it'll be probably about 3 weeks to a month, possibly even sooner. We'll see what we can come up with along the way. Because I could make two payments. I'll be getting, I believe I said this last week, I'll be getting a license through Rockwell. And another thing, I believe I might actually need a Washington State driver's license, which I don't have. I still have my California State driver's license. So we'll see. I'm gonna have to ask. And then I also got this book, Donald Trump's The Art of the Deal. It's actually a really good book. I got it the other day. I've been reading it these last 2 days. So far, we're on page 55. In the portion we're on, he's talking about enhancing your location, how important location is. And, I've only got through this. This is my first time reading it. I know once you read it again, you'll be getting more out of what you're reading. But the writing of it too, when you read it, obviously it's a story. It's from a man's perspective and from his viewpoint of life and what he's gone through his life. Like, he opens up this entire book talking about how his week is, what he's doing throughout the week. And it's very interesting, and it even gives you insight on the character of this man from who he is, not from what the media and all that stuff and whatnot and people's opinions on all this stuff here and what somebody else might think he is. But you're getting it directly from him, and he's giving you this you're getting a good viewpoint of his mindset from his own writings. And it's been changing my perspective a little bit and helping me understand the character of the man we are currently calling president. Anyway, let's get started. We have part 16 to do, and we are very excited for this. We are almost done with month 3. This will be our last week for the 3rd month, and we'll be getting into month 4. And we still have two months after that. Wow. So let's go ahead, let's get started. So Mr. The Master Key System, Part 16 by Mr. Hanel. This is the introduction. So Part 16, Introduction. He says, the vibratory activities of the planetary universe are governed by the law of periodicity. Everything that lives has periods of birth, growth, fruitage, and decline. These periods are governed by the septimal laws. So he's saying that there is periods of growth that we all go throughout our lives. There's legitimate planetary periods. Planetary law of periodicity. The vibratory activities of the planetary universe. Anyway, he's talking about whatever. So he's talking about periods in our lives. Okay, everything that lives has periods of birth, growth, fruitage, and decline. That we all experience these types of periods in our lives. And he's saying these periods are the septimal law. So the law of sevens governs the days of the week, the phases of the moon, the harmonies of sound, light, heat, electricity, magnetism, atomic structure. It governs the life of individuals and of nations, and it dominates the activities of the commercial world. So he's saying the septimal law has power over, or at least has an influence upon, these different domains of our lives. For example, what I'm looking up right now, because we know we have 7 days of the week. We know there are 7 phases of the moon. So let's look. What are the 7 phases of the moon? So he says, so AI is saying these phases in order are: 1 is the new moon, the waxing crescent, the first quarter, waxing gibbous, full moon, waning gibbous, third quarter, or last quarter. So third quarter and last quarter is the same, and waning crescent. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Then what if we have 8? Why am I coming up with 8? We're showing 8 periods of the moon, or 8 phases of the moon. This is the moon progresses through 8 distinct phases as it orbits the Earth, with each phase representing a different portion of the moon's illumined surface visible from our planet. So there must have been an extra phase of the moon that was found after the timing of Hanel writing this book. Okay, let's look at sound. What is it, the solfeggio? I believe it's called the solfeggio. Solfeggio frequency list. Well, even then, the solfeggio, there's a ton. Yeah, it's showing a ton of different ones. Well, even for light, I know with light, let's see, light spectrum, the electromagnetic spectrum. Because we have found a lot since the time of Mr. Hanel's writing. Because this article is showing radio waves, microwaves, infrared, visible light, ultraviolet light, X-rays, and gamma radiation, which is 7. But even visible light, The 7 visible spectrums are red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet. There is a lot that goes into this portion alone. Okay, well, let's go ahead and continue. It says it governs the life of individuals and of nations, and it dominates the activities of the commercial world. Life is growth, and growth is change. Each 7-year period takes us into a new cycle. The first 7 years is the period of infancy. The next 7, the period of childhood, representing the beginning of individual responsibility. The next 7 represents the period of adolescence. The 4th period marks the attainment of full growth. The 5th period is the constructive period, when men begin to acquire property, possessions, a home, and family. The next, from 35 to 42, is a period of reactions and changes, and this in turn is followed by a period of reconstruction, adjustment, and recuperation, so as to be ready for a new cycle of 7s beginning with the 50th year. Those familiar with these cycles will not be disturbed when things seem to go wrong, but can apply the principles outlined in these lessons with the full assurance that a higher law will invariably control all other laws, and that through an understanding and conscious operation of spiritual laws, we can convert every seeming difficulty into a blessing. Now, does this really matter for us? Not really. When we live our lives, we're taught that consciousness is a creative force anyway. And no matter what age we are, none of that matters. What matters is our ability to have the focus, to have the attention, to be able to set the goal and to move towards that goal, taking action towards it, so we could create it and manifest it in our lives. The age doesn't matter. There are people in the world that are very, very young doing amazing things. There are people in the world that are older that are doing amazing things. It doesn't really matter what age you are or what seeming period you find yourself in this septimal law. So that's the introduction. Let's continue. So he says, wealth is a product of labor. Capital is an effect, not a cause. A servant, not a master. A means, not an end. The most commonly accepted definition of wealth is that it consists of all useful and agreeable things, which possess exchange value. It is this exchange value which is the predominant characteristic of wealth. So he's telling us what makes something or someone considered to be of wealth, like our dollars, right? The more dollars you have, the more wealthier you would be considered to be because of the exchange value you now have. You can use it in exchange for more things than somebody that does not have as much and cannot exchange. They don't have as much exchange power to be able to afford or have as many things. And he's telling us that capital, being able to build wealth, is an effect, right? It comes from a cause. And we're going to learn it or go through that cause. The cause of wealth is being of service. It is service, providing your economy, providing your society, providing your community with a need, filling it with a need, filling it with a product or service that is of value that people need and are looking for and are willing to exchange their wealth in turn for your skills or what it is that you have to offer. He says, when we consider the small addition made by wealth to the happiness of the possessor, we find that the true value consists not in its utility, but in its exchange. So he's telling us that the happiness wealth brings to the possessor is not found in how much we have. It's found in what we can exchange it for, what we use it for. Now we even go through in Financial Fitness when they talk about wealth and money as a tool, right? It is a tool. Money is a tool to allow us to get to where it is that we want to go. As he says right here, right? It's a means to an end, but it is not the end. It helps us get to the things that we want. That money is a servant. It is not a master. And if it becomes your master, you then idolize it. And we know idolizing anything other than God itself is seen to be foolish. It's an abomination. Because we know money in and of itself is not evil. It's just an idea. It's something that it's a sheet of paper made by atomic particles that is vibrating at its core. It's nothing but an idea. When we consider the small addition, okay, we just read that part. He says this exchange value makes it a medium for securing the things of real value, whereby our ideals may be realized. So he's saying money, as we were just talking, money is a tool to help us realize our ideals. It is something that's there to allow us to fulfill our goals, our desires, our images, our mental images, the life that we see for ourselves. Wealth should then never be desired as an end, but simply as a means of accomplishing an end. Success is contingent upon a higher ideal than the mere accumulation of riches, and he who aspires to such success must formulate an ideal for which he is willing to strive. Now, I remember I believe it was Henry Ford, he made a quote, or there is a quote. He said, the man whose business only makes money, that only makes money as a poor business. Something along those lines. He's talking about business. If your business means is just to make money alone, you have a poor business because that's what you're focused on. You're focused mainly on the money. You're not focused on the higher end of what business is, which is providing, which is giving, which is filling the need. So we attain riches and wealth so we could fulfill our life's purpose, our destiny, so to speak. We must have a higher ideal than just a possession of money. With such an ideal in mind, the ways and means can and will be provided, but the mistake must not be made of substituting the means for the end. There must be a definite, fixed purpose, an ideal. So he's telling us to live a fuller and more happy life is to focus mainly on the purpose, focus on the ideal. For money is going to be the tool which will allow us to create that ideal, to manifest it, to bring it into fruition. So Prentice Mulford said, quote, "The man of success is the man possessed of the greatest spiritual understanding, and every great fortune comes of superior and truly spiritual power." End quote. Unfortunately, there are those who fail to recognize this power. They forget that Andrew Carnegie's mother had to help support the family when they came to America. The Harriman's father was a poor clergyman with a salary of only $200 a year. That Sir Thomas Lipton started with only 25 cents. These men had no other power to depend upon, but it did not fail them. So he's saying the spiritual power. Prentice Mulford is telling us that the spiritual power is the most important power that we can have, for it is the very source of which we are going to create our wealth out of anyway. That these other men, Andrew Carnegie's mother, Harriman's father, Sir Thomas Lipton, these men had absolutely nothing to depend upon. They had no other wealth to start with. but they had this power. And because they depended upon this spirit, this infinite mind, the intelligence of the universe, and the law of attraction, and the power of desire, and the force of their ideal, it didn't matter how much wealth they had in the beginning. The universal mind brought them the things they needed to create the ideal, regardless. So he says the power to create depends entirely upon spiritual power. There are 3 steps: idealization, visualization, and materialization. Every captain of industry depends upon this power exclusively. In an article in Everybody's Magazine, Henry M. Flagler, the Standard Oil multimillionaire, admitted that the secret of his success was his power to see a thing in its completeness. The following conversation with the reporter shows his power of idealization, concentration, and visualization, all spiritual powers. Quote, "Did you actually vision to yourself the whole thing? I mean, did you, or could you, really close your eyes and see the tracks?" End quote. Oh, I'm sorry, let's continue. "And the train's running, and hear the whistles blowing. Did you go as far as that?" End quote. And then, what was it? Flagler responds. He says, yes, he did see things as clearly as possible. Then whoever's interviewing him responds back, says, how clearly? And then Flagler responds again. He says, very clearly. Here we have a vision of the law. We see cause and effect. We see that thought necessarily precedes and determines action. If we are wise, we shall come into a realization of the tremendous fact that no arbitrary condition can exist for a moment, and that human experience is a result of an orderly and harmonious sequence. So this man Flagler, making multi-millions of dollars through oil, says that he had an absolute vivid picture of what it is that he wanted first in his mind. He had a concrete ideal. He had his goal. He had a clear vision. He's seen it in consciousness, in his imagination. And he visualized and concentrated around that mental image of which he had of the thing that he wanted. And we know that that imaging, that ability to do that, is a spiritual power, because it shows the discipline he has within his own consciousness, his mind. And because of that, he was able to create his multi-million-dollar oil empire. Like he says, he's seen it very clearly. Now, what Hanel is saying after this story, this example of Flagler gives us a vision of how the law works. It gives us insight on how cause and effect works. That first we have to have the ideal. We have to have the goal. We have to have the foundation in our mind and concentrate around that ideal. Concentrate and visualize around that mental picture, that image of the thing that we want. And through concentration, through that mental picturing, we will then bring it closer to us. We will move in that direction. Remember, as Proverbs tells us, the man without the vision will perish. We have to have the vision, because that's going to set the stone of where it is that we are going. That's going to be the very thing that, in turn, since the law of cause and effect, the law of attraction and motion. Now, I see these things. When I was focused on becoming lead in Walmart, the things that were happening and working around me to make that ideal real, it was happening. I felt like I was moving. I seen that I was moving in the direction of lead. But after a while, and the more I learned in seeing, Walmart, and seeing how others there that were working there were actually living, and when I went on that retreat and I was able to get away from all that, and I seen clearly on, hey, if I keep going this way, this is exactly how my life is going to be. And is that really what I want? I know how Hanel told us not that long ago on how once you remove your focus from a certain goal and you place it somewhere else, the energy you're putting into this portion is no longer being put into that area. It's going to be put into something else. And the energy of creating this is now dying. It's being sapped. It's no longer being fed. So that manifestation will no longer be in process, right? Because now you shift your focus and your manifestation towards something else. Like with what's happening now, right? I'm now getting involved in real estate. I am now getting involved with this new opportunity that came in my life because I see how it could allow me. It's a vehicle that will allow me to do more of the things that I want to do with my life. And most importantly, it'll give me time. It'll give me my time back. Not only will it give me a heck of a lot of money, but it'll give me the most important thing, which is more time. It'll give me the time and resources to have a family, to be there for my family, to have nice things, and to be able to help other families on a higher level. Housing is a very, very big deal, and it's a much bigger deal, much more valuable than just giving customer service as a Walmart associate. It is very, very more important. In my opinion, it is. And since then, yeah, my efforts at Walmart, I'm still doing what I need to do, but I'm not trying nearly as hard as I was, because now all I'm thinking about is something else that I have over here. So let's continue. But again, back to having the vision of the law. My thoughts shifted towards a different direction. The things I'm picturing now in my mind are different. And because they are different, now I'm experiencing different things in my life. Because now I am moving in a different direction. Right? This shows the power of the spirit. It shows the power of the mind and the essence of the infinite mind. And how everything is made inside and out of mind. Because everything we do, everything we say, every thought we think, first, every action we take, first has its origin in human consciousness, in the mind, in the form of thought. The successful businessman is more often than not an idealist and is ever striving for higher and higher standards. The subtle forces of thought as they crystallize in our daily moods are what constitute life. Thought is the plastic material with which we build images of our growing conception of life. Use determines its existence, as in all other things. Our ability to recognize it and use it properly is the necessary condition for attainment. So as he said before, especially in opening this system up, we already have this power. We already have the power to create. We are created in God's image. The Father, the universal mind, infinite potential already exists within us. But we, as individual sparks of consciousness, we as our own center of I am, we as our own individual centers of awareness, we have to recognize it. We have to understand it. We have to learn what we are in possession of in order to really gain and have access to it, to use it. Right? He's saying we have to recognize it and use it properly, right? And this is true in anything, right? For me to be a successful real estate agent, I have to keep growing in my awareness as an agent. And as I continue to grow in my thoughts and my awareness of being an agent, and will then begin to manifest more and more of life as a realtor. Thought is the plastic material with which we build images of our growing conception of life. Use determines its existence. Excuse me. As in all other things, our ability to recognize it and use it properly is a necessary condition for attainment. Premature wealth is but the forerunner of humiliation and disaster, because we cannot permanently retain anything which we do not merit or which we have not earned. And you see that happening all the time. Let's say, for example, there are people that may come into an inheritance and they squander that inheritance because they themselves did not earn it. Because they didn't earn it, they didn't value it as much as it actually means. They didn't value the real value of it. And because of that, in the end, it brought humiliation and disaster for them because they didn't merit it. They didn't earn it. Or likewise with those that win the lottery. Now, for granted, there are still those people that are very, very smart and intelligent with possibly their inheritance, because they may have already built something themselves and they understand the need of using it wisely. But you hear, like I say, you hear stories all the time. Somebody that could win, that could gamble and win, and they win millions and millions of dollars, and within the year they're homeless out in the streets because they weren't smart with their finances. The conditions with which we meet in the world without correspond to the conditions which we find in the world within. This is brought about by the law of attraction. How then shall we determine what is to enter into the world within? Whatever enters the mind through the senses or the objective mind will impress the mind and result in a mental image, which will become a pattern for the creative energies. I forgot to tell you, I did tell you that it was Wednesday. It is May 14th today, and right now it is 9:20 p.m. So we're almost 40 minutes in. We started around 8:40. So he's saying the mental pictures that we have, as he has told us in a prior lesson, that the mental pictures form the mold, right? They form the model out of which the creative energies, this universal creative power, which we are part of, is going to manifest in our lives. Remember, first it becomes our character, it becomes our action, right? These thoughts will manifest in our actions, while simultaneously the law of attraction will bring situations and circumstances that are in alignment with our thoughts, and we will meet with them in the external world. We and the actions we take in the situations we experience in the external world will correspond. They will be at one, and your thought internal will become a thing. It'll become manifested in form. These experiences are largely the result of environment, chance, past thinking, and other forms of negative thought, and must be subjected to careful analysis before being entertained. On the other hand, we can form our own mental images through our own interior processes of thought, regardless of the thoughts of others, regardless of exterior conditions, regardless of environment of every kind. And it is by the exercise of this power that we can control our destiny, body, mind, and soul. So he's telling us there that it doesn't matter what situation we're in. It doesn't matter what condition we're in, because we have the power to think any thought we want at any given moment, regardless of our circumstances. So when it comes to not being a product of our environment, when it comes to not being held down by the environment, it involves you overcoming your environment first in thought, right? You have to think above the environment you're in. You have to think above the situation, the immediate situation and circumstance you're in. And thinking on a higher plane of thought will allow you to respond to your environment, to create an entirely new environment, because you're not letting what's around you influence your thinking. You, with your thinking, are in turn influencing your environment to change. You'll be influencing your environment to change and not allowing your environment to influence you to change. Right, again, remember that's the goal, because you have to be able to think separate from the environment. You have to think bigger than the environment. Remember, thinking big is the key, because that higher thought, thinking from a higher standpoint, will allow you to manifest and create higher things in your life. It is by the exercise of this power that we take our fate out of the hands of chance and consciously make for ourselves the experiences which we desire. Because when we consciously realize a condition, that condition will eventually manifest in our lives. It is therefore evident that in the last analysis, thinking is the one great cause of life. And that is positive. That's positive proof the power of thought over the environment, since by the simple act of thinking higher than the environment you're in, that process of thought alone, and these laws that follow, the psychological law of how we will become that which we think, this universal creative law of attraction and cause and effect, we will just in turn attract and manifest things that are higher than the environment of which we are currently in. And again, that shows the presence of this infinite mind. That shows the presence and power of this universal creative intelligence that we know as God, that Jesus taught us as the Father. In our intimate connection with it in consciousness alone, that all we have to do is think and engage in the process of mental imaging and visualization. And by that simple act, we will change the course of our lives. It's all associated with consciousness. It's all centered in consciousness alone. Therefore, to control thought is to control circumstances, conditions, environment, and destiny. How then are we to control thought? What is the process? And the whole first 5 parts is all about taking control over your thought process, taking control over your mind and what it is that you're focusing on. Because remember, first we get control over the physical body, then we get control over our thinking, then we learn to relax through that process. In that process, you are tilling the soil of your mind. Because remember, that process is going to show you how many thoughts are gaining access into your world, or how much your focus is jumping from one thought to the next, or one thing to the next. Because remember, you have to get to the point where you could focus your mind on one specific thing for a very long portion of time, and to exclude any other thought that has nothing to be associated with your goal, your purpose. right? The whole first 5 parts of this system goes over that. And we go over how it's tilling the soil of your mind. You're rooting the thoughts out of your mind that no longer serve you, that aren't doing anything for you, that are not getting you anywhere. And you're getting rid of them. Like your farm. Remember your plot of land. The mind is your plot of land. And you are pulling the weeds of the thoughts that no longer serve you. And as you till that soil, as you clean out the land of your mind, of the kingdom within you, we can say, then you are able to plant the fruit that you want to manifest in your life, right? If you want to plant oranges, say oranges are a better career, a certain career. You want to switch your career. You could begin to think upon that career, and that career could be your orange tree. And then the thoughts that you plant in your mind are going to be associated with your new career, your profession. And by the simple act of thinking about it, you planted that seed in the soil of the subconscious, and thinking about it and desiring it and taking action towards it and moving in that direction. You are feeding that seed. You're feeding that idea, that character in your subconscious mind, and you'll just inevitably move in that direction. In the weeds around that orange tree would be distractions, right? What are you engaging in that is not associated with your purpose, that's keeping you away from acting on your purpose? All right, those would be the weeds. Those are going to be the thoughts. No longer thinking about those things that are not going to serve you, that are not going to help you reach your goal, and focusing on the things that are. You being able to do this is what's going to allow you to take control over your life. You take control over your life by simply taking control over the creative power working in your life, which is your own mind. Remember the law of attraction, the law of correspondence, this infinite, universal mind that we live in responds to your own personal consciousness, just what's happening inside of you. It responds to what is happening within you. Because remember, you are this power embodied in a physical form. Very interesting, very powerful. To think is to create a thought, but the result of the thought will depend upon its form, its quality, and its vitality. The form will depend upon the mental images from which it emanates. This will depend upon the depth of the impression, the predominance of the idea, the clarity of the vision, the boldness of the image. The quality depends upon its substance, and this depends upon the material of which the mind is composed. So the quality, he's telling us the quality of our images are going to be dependent upon the quality of the soil of which we have prepared our mind to be. And he says the form of which this mind will take will depend upon how even the form is dependent upon the quality. The form has to be dependent upon the quality, for the form itself will come out of the quality of the material of which is making the form itself. So he's saying this material, if this material has been woven from thoughts of vigor, strength, courage, determination, the thought will possess these qualities which he's been giving us and telling us this entire time. It's affirmations, it's mental picturings, it's going into the silence and envisioning ourselves with these characteristics already. That is how we are building the quality of the mind. We are building the form of which our mind will take. And finally, the vitality depends upon the feeling with which the thought is impregnated. If the thought is constructive, it will possess vitality. It will have life. It will grow, develop, expand. It will be creative. It will attract to itself everything necessary for its complete development. Now, have you noticed, because I've already noticed, each part tells us the exact same thing. Mr. Hanel is telling us the exact same thing 24 different ways. Hey, it's mind, it's consciousness, it's our ability to desire the ideal of which we have. It's these universal laws in play. It's these laws of which all of us are governed by, which the universe is governed by. These principles which God has given us to follow, and the power that He has bestowed us with. Accessing all of this and manifesting things in our life is dependent upon how we ourselves use and apply our own personal consciousness, our own individual center of awareness. Everything we create and the life we live is dependent upon how we use our own attention and our focus and our ability to create mental pictures. Because everything we do naturally stems from the mental images that we are creating. If the thought is destructive, it will have within itself the germ of its own dissolution. It will die, but in the process of dying, it will bring sickness, disease, and every other form of discord. This we call evil, and when we bring it upon ourselves, some of us are disposed. Now, that's an incomplete sentence. I know I shared that before. I said that before. Right? Unless that's just how it was worded back in the day, and it made sense back in the day. Maybe I'm just, really dumb and it just doesn't make sense to me. Or I don't get it. Oh man, there are so many things that I'm still very ignorant about. There is always something that we do not know. There's always something we don't know. Some of us are disposed to attribute our difficulties to a supreme being, but this supreme being is simply mind in equilibrium. It is neither good nor bad. It simply is. So what he told us right there is that this infinite mind, this universal intelligence, this quantum field is neither good nor bad, that it is something that just is. It's a very interesting concept because we know the Holy Bible, the Book of Life, teaches this mind as infinite good. And even Mr. Hanel is talking about earlier. Mr. Hanel says that the law of attraction itself is the law of love. So the very foundation of our universe is built upon love itself. And as Christ tells us, the Father is all love. God is love. So how could this mind be neither good or bad? How can this mind simply just be? If even Mr. Hanel said in a prior lesson that the law of attraction being the most powerful and fundamental law of all existence, and that this law of attraction is love. And we know that God, the creative force of everything, is love. How can it be something that simply is? How can it be something that is neither good nor bad? It has to be one or the other. That's a interesting interesting thought to think about. Because he did tell us just in the prior lesson that, right, ignorance only exists in the absence of knowledge. But he said knowledge itself is a principle of life. Ignorance is not. Now he says light is a principle of life, that darkness is not. That darkness only exists because light is not present. But the real truth is found in the light itself. Right? So he's saying that one aspect of life exists through principle, through wisdom, through, obviously that would mean that one aspect of our life exists because of the presence of God. The other aspect of life would only exist without the presence of God. That is very, very interesting. Something that's very interesting to think about. Let's continue. So, last thing he told us, right, this power is neither good or bad. It simply is. So he says our ability to differentiate it into form is our ability to manifest good. Excuse me, sorry. Our ability to manifest good or evil. Good and evil, therefore, are not entities. They are simply words which we use to indicate the result of our actions. And these actions are in turn predetermined by the character of our thought. Yes, because thought is the fruit of action. Action being the fruit of our thought. Well, thought being the seed of our action. So he's saying depending upon what actions we take, the results of that action, whether the result of that action has brought about something good, something constructive, something useful, that obviously is something that we have defined as good. If that action has brought about something that brought discord, a result that was not good, that was a detriment, that didn't help anybody, that actually took from what you had before, that result would be considered evil. That idea would then be considered evil. That action was not a good action. If our thought is constructive and harmonious, we manifest good. If it is destructive and discordant, we manifest evil. If you desire to visualize a different environment, the process is simply to hold the ideal in mind until your vision has made it real. Yes, because I'm experiencing it. I'm seeing it happen in my life. Because I am more focused now on something bigger, better, real estate, Keller Williams. And because I'm focusing more on that, my life has been manifesting more and more of this. Well, like today, I went and talked to my coach, and I asked her if I could have Wednesdays off now, if I could take Tuesdays and Wednesdays off instead, because I have contract meetings that I need to attend. I need to be around this other place more. You know what she said? Yes, I'll look at the schedule. We'll see what we can do. That would never have happened if I was never thinking about this to begin with. That would never have been created, and I never would have approached my coach about having Wednesday off, and my schedule would have been the same. All right, my life is changing slowly but surely, simply by the change of my focus. Give no thought to persons, places, or things. These have no place in the absolute. The environment you desire will contain everything necessary. The right persons and the right things will come at the right time and in the right place. It is sometimes not plain how character, ability, attainment, achievement, environment, and destiny can be controlled through the power of visualization. But this is an exact scientific fact. Man. Do you realize how powerful that statement is? The man without a vision shall perish. It is sometimes not plain how character, ability, attainment, achievement, environment, and destiny can be controlled through the power of visualization. That's literally all you have to do. All you have to do is make the time, take the time to sit in the silence. Pull out the weeds of your mind. Pull out the things, the thoughts that no longer serve you. And start focusing and visualizing around the ones that do. Visualize the life how you want to live. And have the courage to act on that vision. Act on that idea. That's all you have to do. And this is an exact scientific fact. It's been scientifically proven that this is how it is. And you will readily see that what we think determines the quality of mind, and that the quality of mind in turn determines our ability and mental capacity. And you can readily understand that the improvement in our ability will naturally be followed by increase in attainment and a greater control of circumstances. So he's saying the greater your ability to control your mind, the greater your ability to harness this infinite storehouse of power, of wisdom, of intelligence that exists within you, right? Your ability to do that is going to in turn increase your ability to create higher quality things in your lives. Remember, as he says back here, the quality of what you create depends upon the material of which your mind is composed. And the fabric, the material of which your mind is composed, is going to be dependent upon how conscious you are, how aware you are, how much you go into the silence and just become more and more aware and focus on this power of which you already have control of. The form of which your character will take will depend upon the quality of which your mind is composed, because that form is going to be the blueprint out of which that quality material, that the quality of your mental material is going to flow, right? We know the form. You cannot make broadcloth from shoddy, right? He said that in part 5, I believe it was part 5, right? You cannot make an apple tree out of orange seeds, right? You cannot take on a high quality form of character if you do not have a high quality mental material, if you are not expanded in your awareness as an individual conscious being. And obviously the vitality of which all this takes is dependent upon your depth of feeling, the depth of desire of which you have towards your life, towards the things you want. You readily see that what we think determines the quality of mind, and that the quality of mind in turn determines our ability and mental capacity. And you can readily understand that the improvement in our ability will naturally be followed by increase in attainment and a greater control of circumstance. And he's telling us the greatest of all practices we can undergo is mental and spiritual training, because the higher we can grow and develop mentally and spiritually, these things externally will naturally just come about, because you're growing in thought. You're growing in your ability to visualize. You're growing in your ability to see a greater future for yourself and for your family. You're growing in your ability to be disciplined in your thought process, to be able to say no to distractions and yes to these higher things, these more important things in our lives as men. You're saying yes to those things. You're focusing on those things. You're attending to those things. Remember, since everything is made inside and out of consciousness, your attention, your focus is going to be the very thing necessary to grow that aspect of your life, to put more into it, to manifest more of it, to be more a part of it. It is your attention. It will thus be seen that natural laws work in a perfectly natural and harmonious manner. Everything seems to just happen. If you want any evidence of this fact, simply compare results of your efforts in your own life when your actions are prompted by high ideals, which we were just doing earlier in this book part. And when you had selfish or ulterior motives in mind, you will need no further evidence. If you wish to bring about the realization of any desire, form a mental picture of success in your mind by consciously visualizing your desire. In this way, you will be compelling success. You will be externalizing it in your life by scientific methods. And that method is simply the very act of visualization alone. Now, viewer, look at the times in your life when you created certain specific things, when you experienced certain things, and what you were thinking about during that time. Think about how your experiences in your life are always following what you are thinking prior to that experience. Everything you experience first has it always comes after an initial thought process. That the thought always must proceed first before the action and its manifestation follows. The thought must always happen first. We can only see what already exists in the objective world, but what we visualize already exists in the spiritual world. And this visualization is a substantial token of what will one day appear in the objective world, if we are faithful to our ideal. The reason for this is not difficult. Visualization is a form of imagination. This process of thinking forms impressions on the mind, and these impressions in turn form concepts and ideals, and they in turn are the plans from which the master architect will weave the future. The psychologists have come to the conclusion that there is but one sense, the sense of feeling, and that all other senses are but modifications of this one sense. This being true, we know why feeling is the very fountainhead of power, why the emotions so easily overcome the intellect, and why we must put feeling into our thought if we wish results. Thought and feeling is the irresistible combination. Visualization must, of course, be directed by the will. We are to visualize exactly what we want, and we must be careful not to let the imagination run riot. Imagination is a good servant, but a poor master, and unless it is controlled, it may easily lead us into all kinds of speculations and conclusions. Which have no basis or foundation of fact whatever. Every kind of plausible opinion is liable to be accepted without any analytical examination, and the inevitable result is mental chaos. I'm totally going to create a modern day master key system. When the time is right, when I have my financial fruits on the tree, because I have to prove that this information is true through my own results. And the biggest of all of them, yes, my health, of course, obviously my health, but my finances. I have an obligation to make a ton of money. I remember he even mentioned in a former lesson that even us who are going to be representatives of this infinite power cannot be bankrupt ourselves. We cannot be poor ourselves. We have to prove this power can and does work in all areas of our lives. We have to prove it by having the fruit on the tree. And once I develop that fruit on the tree, I will definitely have the fruit on the tree and the money, as we're going over, the means to an end. We will have the means to attaining the end, which will be the expansion of this society and the information found therein, by first using it to create the life that we want and desire. Because real estate looks awesome, man. Especially after this meeting today. Did you know 90%, I don't even remember if I explained this earlier, 90% of all millionaires come from real estate alone. 90%. That is a big percentage. And we're next. We're next because we cannot live our lives on somebody else's schedule, on some kind of 9 to 5. I just can't do it. I can't do it. I tried. It's just, it eats away at the human spirit. It may work for some people. Some people are happy doing it. But I am not one of those people. I cannot live my life that way. Oh my gosh. The only way I could see myself living my life that way is by doing something I love. And having no problem getting up in the morning knowing that I'm going to engage in something that makes me extremely happy, as compared to getting up in the morning with the feeling of, I gotta do this today. Right? Like, I don't want to do, I gotta do this today. I get to do this today. But of course, we want to be grateful for the things that we have, but there's also a fine line between these other things that we are capable of doing. There's a fine line, because the life I'm living, there's somebody that would be more than happy to fill the position I'm in, and they would be just happy. That's not me. I gotta pass through that. I can't do it. That lady was right. I'm not meant to stay there. I'm just passing through there. I deserve more. There's more for me. Oh my gosh. We must therefore construct only such mental images as are known to be scientifically true, subject every idea to a searching analysis, and accept nothing which is not scientifically exact. When you do this, you will attempt nothing but what you know you can carry out, and success will crown your efforts. So what he's telling us right there, do not just accept anything that cannot be proven. Only accept the things which are proven. Because this is a scientific age, and we have learned that we can learn the truth through observation, that we can perform experiments which show the truth and reality of the situation. of a given situation. So he's saying only accept and bring your mind into congruence with the things that have been found to be scientifically exact, because they have been proven to be true regardless of our personal opinions about it. Because doing this will bring our mind in subjection to God's laws, nature's laws, which is a stable law. It's a stable thing. There's stability in that thought, stability in that wisdom, stability in that knowing. He says, when you do this, you will attain nothing but what you know you can carry out, and success will crown your efforts. This is what businessmen call far-sightedness. It is much the same as insight, and is one of the great secrets of success in all important undertakings. For your exercise this week, try to bring yourself to a realization of the important fact that harmony and happiness are states of consciousness, and do not depend upon the possession of things, that things are effects, and come as a consequence of correct mental states. Which, yes, that is true. You can be extremely happy with what you have. You can be extremely happy in consciousness, because I know when I'm in nature and I'm just one with nature and I'm not thinking about anything I own, I'm not thinking about being hungry, I'm not thinking about any of that, and I'm just in nature, I am happy. I know that to be true. When I get back to the things I would like to have, I'm pursuing the things that I'm pursuing, I do move into a state of unsatisfaction. I do move into a state of desire, which there's nothing wrong with, right? We as humans, we are goal-oriented creatures, and we all have our individual goals, our own individual values. And we have to have a goal. We have to have something to aim for. We have to, because that pulls out the best. That does not only just pull out the best out of us, but that gives us something to strive for, gives us something to focus our mind upon, gives us something to create. That's the key. It gives us something to create, and we are creative beings. So that if we desire material possession of any kind, our chief concern should be to acquire the mental attitude which will bring about the result desired. So he's telling here, anything that we desire, anything that we want to have, we have to develop its mental correspondence first. Now, as we talked about in the beginning portions in one of the earlier parts, specifically part 1, if you want to develop health, you have to develop a health consciousness. You have to begin thinking from the viewpoint of health. You have to embody the mental attitude of health. And by simply embodying its mental attitude and acting upon it, you will then create health in your life, because you'll change what you're eating. You'll change what you're cooking for yourself. You'll change your habits and the actions you take, which in turn will manifest more health for you. Same thing with wealth. If you want to develop wealth in your life, you have to develop the wealth consciousness. Now, the interesting thing with wealth, and even it's true with health too, there are so many different variables, so many different elements, so many different opportunities of which you can act upon to build that wealth, build that health in your life. There are many, many different ways of doing it. And obviously, depending upon the opportunity you get in, the career you engage in, the service you desire or choose to give out to society, you'll then be rewarded with money. You'll be rewarded with wealth. But notice again, that career, that entrepreneurship, that business, whatever it is that you're doing, first has its beginning in your mind, in your thought process, in how you are focusing your attention. This mental attitude is brought about by a realization of our spiritual nature and our unity with the universal mind, which is the substance of all things. This realization will bring about everything which is necessary for our complete enjoyment. This is scientific or correct thinking. Now, why is this so? Why is this going to realize? Why is this realization? Why is this realization going to bring about everything which we desire? Because we're becoming conscious of how these laws work. We're becoming conscious of the creative power of thought. We're becoming conscious of this kingdom of heaven, of which we are a part of, which is within us. And we're becoming conscious of how to utilize this power and direct it towards the things in our lives. When we succeed in bringing about this mental attitude, it is comparatively easy to realize our desire as an already existing fact or as an already accomplished fact. When we can do this, we shall have found the truth, which makes us free from every lack or limitation of any kind. And it all leads to the simple act of visualization. That's all you have to do is develop your ability to concentrate and visualize and to build an image of what it is that you want and hold that image upon the frame of your mind. Hold that image in consciousness. That's all you have to do. And everything follows from that mental picture. Because remember, since the universal mind, since mind and consciousness itself is the substance of everything, and that your mind is no different from the universal mind, that this mental picture, your ability to imagine and create the image in mind, you're sending that image out into the infinite. You're letting the infinite universe, you're letting God, you're letting infinite intelligence know exactly what it is that you want. And however these laws work, the law of attraction, the law of cause and effect, these laws will the universe will just move things to match and correspond with the mental image of which you have in your mind. That's what he is telling us. And of course, that leads back to knowing exactly what it is that we want. We have to know what we want because we know Rome wasn't built in a day. We know that manifesting an ox takes longer than manifesting wheatgrass. That wheatgrass, depending on the size of the thing you're trying to create, obviously there's going to be more time involved. So now we're ending with a quote. We have a quote by H.W. Beecher. And he says, "A man might frame and let loose a star to roll in its orbit, and yet not have done so a memorable a thing before God as he who lets a golden-orbed thought to roll through the generations of time." End quote. So he's saying the man who lets a golden-orbed thought roll through the generations of time for other men to know is greater and more powerful than any man who could take a star and set that star in orbit around a solar system. Because the ability to let a star loose around a star or to a planet, a frame, whatever, around a star, it's going to take thought to begin to do that, to be able to do that to begin with. And then there's one more. This next quote is by Bovey. And he says, "The greatest events of an age are its best thoughts. It is the nature of thought to find its way into action." End quote. And that is the end of this part. visualization, imagination, this week's exercise, we'll focus on the power of our states of mind. Oh, excuse me. Just got hit by the hiccups. This week we'll focus on the power of our states of mind. And we're going to look at how subtle and how we change and how our directions change and how things change so simply and subtly and quickly by the change of our thinking. And how we think, like the quality of which we think, meaning like how it is what we think about what we think about, or whether we're thinking about something from a positive perspective or we're thinking about it from a negative perspective. Because the thing we think about is what it is, but how we think about it is going to determine our attitude. Okay, Hacienda 16. I will see you next week. Remember, we have our 4 to 5 days of sitting and just being with ourselves, listening to the part, focusing on the practice, and visualizing, and just getting so engrossed in our thought process. If you made it to the end of this video, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next week for part 17.